Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3777, and today's date is November 18th, 2025, and the title of the episode is EU Cuts Economic Growth. 150 years of data shows the central bank misled the public. Now, we've all seen the headlines that talk about Ozempic and similar miracle weight loss shots, but what most people don't realize is this. A major analysis just found out that people who stop taking these weight loss injections gain nearly all their weight back within a year. That's the catch. These drugs only work while you're on them. They're expensive, and the moment you stop, your body fights back. This is why I like BioTrust GLP-1 Elevate, and everyone is obsessed with the weight management results I've seen with it. It helps my body naturally trigger the same hunger-controlling, craving-reducing signals that Ozempic would, but without needles, prescriptions, or the scary side effects. It also promotes fullness, helps reduce hunger hormones, supports fat loss instead of muscle loss, and helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels. For a limited time, you can grab a bag of BioTrust GLP-1 Elevate for 40% off only at trimwithx22.com. Plus, you'll also receive a 60-day satisfaction guarantee and free express shipping on subscriptions. Once again, go to trimwithx22.com to get this deal now, or just click the link in the description. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, they've been lying to the people for a very long time. Remember, the tariff system, I'm talking about the full tariff system. I'm not just talking about a couple of tariffs that presidents have put on other countries, but I'm talking about going full in on tariffs like Trump is doing right now. And if you go back in time, like McKinley has done and Andrew Jackson, they have all done this without the private West Central Bank system. And when you have a full tariff system, it actually can fund the country. It's a way to bring in income without borrowing the currency with interest attached. And of course, the central bank, over a very long period of time, they never wanted anyone to know about the tariff system. They tried to convince the American people and the people across the world that tariffs create inflation. Now, what they always do is they project what their system does onto a system that actually will compete, which will do a lot better than their system. And this is what they've done to tariffs. Now, tariffs are very, very important, and Trump is now using them to go after the private West Central Bank and for us to go back to the Constitution. Now, this is very, very important. I don't think people understand how important this is because, once again, let's say the Supreme Court rules against Trump, saying you can't use tariffs, and all the other laws that were put into place, the Supreme Court rules against it, and we're out of luck. That means there's no other way to fund the government except a private corporation where we borrow the currency with interest attached, which means you will always be a slave to the system, which means you will work harder and harder and harder and harder, and you'll have to pay more and more of your hard-earned money. Trump is trying to break us free from all this. We've had many, many presidents that broke us free from the private West Central Bank system. And for a very long time, the private West Central Bank system has lied to the American people, trying to convince everyone that tariffs are bad, tariffs cause inflation, tariffs aren't fair. And what they're really doing is they're trying to keep everyone away from the tariff system, because the tariff system actually brings in income. The tariff system does not cause inflation. Tariff system brings in external revenue, and the people do not have to give away their hard-earned money. And this is very, very important. And this is one of the reasons why our founding fathers fought the British government and the central bank system at the time. Because who do you think was funding the British government at the time? It was the central bank system. The central bank system has been around for thousands of years. And Trump now is pushing forward with this. And I don't think the people in this country, the people around the world, understand the importance of it. Because once we break free of the central bank system, everyone's life is going to change for the better. And it's going to be absolutely incredible. And you could see this is why there were a lot of countries fighting Trump, where they didn't want to make a trade deal because they knew they were getting tons and tons of currency from the Federal Reserve in this country to keep their country operational and their programs operational. And when you look at the EU, they're about to cut economic growth forecast for 2026. And you could see that the tariff deal is actually taking its toll in Europe. And once again, you have to understand, for this system that the central bank put into place to work, it's always lopsided. You have to fund many of the governments across the world. You have to send currency to other places and have the people in this country pay for it all. And Trump is about to reverse all of this. And this is what the central bankers are going to try to stop every step of the way. And you can see what's happening right now as Trump put all the pieces together and he's building this foundation of this new economic system. You can see that everything's starting to turn around, and it will accelerate in the year 2026. And this is something the deep state, the central bankers, do not want anyone to see. Right now, ADP employment is signaling a rebound in the labor market. And for the 4 weeks ending October 31st, 2025, private employers shed an average of 2,500 jobs a week. And this is according to ADP's new weekly employment report update, suggesting that the labor market improved significantly in the last week from an 11,250 average drop during the prior week. So in October, new hires accounted for 4.4% of all employees. ADP payroll is showing this, up from 3.9% a year ago. This growing share of new hires would seem to run counter to the slowed pace of hiring. That contradiction tells us a lot about today's job market. And you have to remember, we're coming off of all the fake numbers that Biden created. The Fed went along with it. Those were all fake job numbers. And now you're going to see the job numbers start to move up quite quickly, because you have to remember, Trump and the Patriots, what are they doing? They're bringing the manufacturers back to this country. And this is going to create construction jobs, because you have to create the manufacturing plants. It's going to create manufacturing jobs and corporate jobs, because once they're all here, and you're going to see this in 2026, you're going to see a lot of jobs created, which means everything is about to reverse, and Trump is creating private jobs instead of government jobs. You have to remember, when you have a central bank system and you're moving all the manufacturers out of this country and you're moving all the corporate jobs out of this country, you need to make up the difference to make it look like the country's doing well. And what they have done is they created government jobs and they bloated this system. They borrow more and more money to pay for these government jobs. These government jobs don't do anything to the economy except bring it down. They don't add anything to it. They don't produce anything. It's actually a drag on the system. And the only way to support it is to continually borrow and borrow and borrow. So right now, you can see that Trump now is moving the government jobs to the private sector. And as he does this, you're going to see a transition, and for a while it'll look a little lopsided. And, of course, the fake news will say, oh, God, look, all these jobs are being lost, but they're government jobs. Trump will be creating the private jobs, and this is where it's most important. And we're going to see a huge shift in 2026. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that Lee Zeldin, he just released a new proposed definition of the waters of the U.S., and he says, we will strictly follow the Supreme Court's Sackett decision to protect America's farmers, ranchers, and others who have been long slammed by massive overregulation. Common sense wins. Under the Clean Act of 1972, the federal government regulates pollution and activities in certain bodies of water to protect water quality. WOTUS defines which waters fall under the federal jurisdiction, things like rivers, lakes, streams, and wetlands. The definition has been contentious for decades because of a broader one means more federal oversight, requiring permits for development in farming or industrial activities near those waters. While a narrower one shifts, more control to states reduces regulation on private land use. What is the Sackett decision? In the 2023 Supreme Court case, Sackett versus EPA, the court, in a 5-4 ruling, significantly limited the EPA's authority by narrowing the WOTUS to include only relatively permanent bodies of water with a continuous service connection to traditional navigable waters like major rivers or oceans. This excludes many isolated or seasonal wetlands that don't have the direct link. Now, as we wrap up 2025, it's a good time to slow down and reflect on the year. If there's one thing we've all learned is that uncertainty isn't temporary. It's the world we live in now. Waiting for things to go back to normal isn't a plan, it's a gamble. For over a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped Americans protect themselves and the people they love by diversifying their wealth with gold and silver. Look, no one knows what 2026 will bring, but one thing's for sure. In an uncertain world, real wealth isn't digital. It's physical, it's lasting, and it's yours. So when you're sitting around the table this holiday season, surrounded by family, remember the best gift you can give isn't under the tree, it's peace of mind. And that's what Noble Gold delivers. Peace of mind, 1 ounce at a time. Before the year ends, take one smart step toward a safer future. Visit X22Gold.com and get your free wealth protection kit today. That's X22Gold.com. Don't leave your future to chance, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. The decision overturned broader interpretations from prior administrations, arguing that the Clean Water Act shouldn't extend to every puddle or ditch on private property. This replaces previous versions, including a 2023 Biden rule that had tried to expand protection post-Sackett but was challenged in courts. The new proposal aims for a clear and durable definition that focuses federal protections on core waters. Farmers and ranchers often deal with land that includes ditches and ponds or wetlands. And under the broader WOTUS definitions, they might need federal permits for routine activities such as plowing, applying pesticides, or building fences if those features are deemed waters. And you can see that this is all now falling apart on the deep state players, because what are they trying to do? They were trying to make sure that they couldn't use the water for farming. They couldn't spray pesticides to stop the bugs. They were trying to basically shut down the farms and most likely take them over in the end. But you can see that all of this is now being reversed. And when you look at the economic system, you can see that Trump has brought down the prices of oil, and Steve Grasso put this out. Oil is down 17%, coal is down 27%, wheat is down 7.3%, corn is down 7.4%, eggs on wholesale level are down 80%, eggs on retail level down 50 to 70%, and lumber is now plunging to its lowest price this year. So Trump is bringing the prices down on everything and controlling inflation. And as the energy prices continually drop, you're going to see all of these things come down. And you have to remember what Trump is doing right now. He's setting up a system to compete and go against the central bank system. And this is very, very important because right now with the central bank system, that's the only way we can fund anything. Trump is creating a parallel economic system where he's allowing the currency to come in from other countries, external sources, to fund the government. So he's bringing in income in another way, so we don't have to borrow currency. If you don't borrow currency, you're not adding to the inflation. And all of those financial pundits, the Federal Reserve and everyone else who said, hey, all these tariffs, they're going to cause inflation. Well, it doesn't. They lied to the American people. And with this new study out, it actually proves it because they're looking at 150 years of data. And once again, why would the central bank tell everyone that? Because they do not want a system that competes with them. And basically, you can't have both. The central bank and the tariff system. I do believe in the end, Trump is going to remove the central bank system and restructure it into the Treasury. So a new historical analysis is challenging the central premise that has guided trade policy, inflation forecasting, and Federal Reserve decisions making for decades. According to the study from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, spanning 150 years of tariff changes across three major Western economies, higher tariffs consistently lower inflation and raise unemployment, directly contradicting long-standing economic orthodoxy. The authors, Regis Barnashan and Singh, examined tariff shifts between 1870 and 2020 in the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, and came to the conclusion that the conventional view of tariffs causing inflation does not survive empirical scrutiny. They said, we find that a tariff hike raises unemployment and lowers inflation. This goes against the predictions of standard models, where CPI inflation should go up in response to higher tariffs. The authors are not claiming that tariff hikes reduce the price level, only that they consistently reduce CPI inflation, the rate at which prices rise in the short run. and that the effect is sizable. If the historical evidence is correct, policymakers may have been responding to a threat that did not exist. The researchers also examined 8 major tariff reform driven by long-term political consideration, including McKinley tariff of 1890 and Trump tariffs of 2018, and found similar effects. The central finding is stark. A roughly 4 percentage point increase in average tariffs lowered inflation by about 2 percentage points and raised unemployment by roughly 1 percentage point. The relationship held across eras, from the pre-1913 globalization wave to the post-war period. This pattern runs directly counter to standard economic theory, which holds that tariffs raise costs, push up consumer prices, and depress economic output. Instead, the historical record shows tariffs acting more like a negative demand shock, simultaneously tightening financial conditions and suppressing inflation. It's completely the opposite of what they have been telling us. And why do you think they were lying to the American people? Because again, if people knew that tariffs were the answer, we would get rid of the central bank system. Plain and simple. And Trump has mentioned McKinley over and over and over when he talks about tariffs. And the tariff men, the presidents of this country, they were absolutely right. And while they were running their tariff system, you know what they got rid of? The central bank. So let's do this study once again, and let's remove the central bank, and let's see how the economy performs. Because remember, what is Trump doing right now? He's bringing outside investment into this country. He's bringing all the manufacturers that were pushed out of this country because of the central bank system. And when people say, what do you mean the central bank system pushed the manufacturers out of this country? Remember, when you're under a central bank system, the currency loses value. If you kept the manufacturers in this country, everything would have been really, really expensive. So what do you have to do? You have to move the manufacturers out to other countries where you're going to pay people pennies on the dollar. It's basically slave labor. And those businesses, farming and insurance and colleges, who can't move their business out of this country, eventually you're going to have to bring in cheaper labor. Because once again, the central bank system does not work, because it actually creates inflation, which means the value of the currency is declining. And as it continually declines, you have to outsource everything in other places, and you need to find cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper labor. And you cannot place tariffs on countries that are manufacturing the products and sending them back to this country. Because if you do that, it ruins everything they're trying to do. So what do you have to do? You have to let them send the products here without tariffs. You see, the tariffs and the central bank system, they really don't work together well. And the central bank system does not work for the people of this country. And this is how important it is. And this is why Trump now is moving as fast as he possibly can to actually reverse everything that they have done since 1913. But when you really look at it, since 1971, that's when we came off the gold standard. That's when we went full fiat. That's when we went ahead with the petrodollar system. And lo and behold, it just happens to be that Saudi Arabia was the first country that actually signed on that was selling the oil using the US dollar. Isn't that interesting? And Trump just had the Saudi prince in this country, and it was very big pomp and circumstance. I do believe that was a message to the deep state players, the central bankers. And he made the announcement that Saudi Arabia will increase its investment in the U.S. to $1 trillion after meeting with Trump. Think about what he just said to the central bankers. Yeah, you set up the petrodollar system. Look what I just did. I'm reversing it all. This is where it started. Well, this is where it's going to end. That's what he's telling the deep state, the central bankers right now. And you can see that Saudi Arabia, from all the wealth that they have accumulated from selling all this oil, remember, they made a lot of money. He's now bringing that money back to this country. I think this tells you everything you need to know. And I do believe in the end, when people experience a system that there's no central bank, we're not paying taxes, we're keeping our hard-earned money, people are going to wake up in droves, and people are going to understand that we should never, ever have a central bank system. Along the way in 2026, people are going to experience this every step of the way. And Trump is actually doing the reverse of what the central bank has done since 1913. If you go back to 1913, the central bank needed to get rid of the tariffs, and which is the external revenue, and actually start taking the internal revenue from the people. And what did they do to trick the people? Oh, don't worry. We're just going to take it from the wealthy. That's all we're going to do. They should pay for everything. And of course, everyone was on board. Yes, tax the wealthy. Hey, by the way, they're still doing it today. Just look at New York. Tax the wealthy. This is the scam they run on the people. And as time went on, what happened? Everybody was taxed. The tariffs pretty much literally disappeared. So now you work and you have to pay your master, your slave driver, which is the central bank system, because you're borrowing that currency. So they started with the wealthy and they went all the way down to the poor, because if they started the other way, do you think anyone would have said okay? No, they wouldn't. Trump now is doing everything in reverse. Think about it. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So he's starting not with the wealthy, but the poor, lower middle class. And as time goes on, he's going to say, okay, everyone under $100,000 or $150,000, you don't have to pay income tax. He's going to actually do the opposite of what the central bank has done. And he's going to allow the wealth to return to the poor, the lower middle class, eventually the middle class, the upper middle class, and then eventually the wealthy. And when people experience this, especially in 2026, when you have the poor, the lower middle class experience this, this is the majority of the country, by the way, the people are going to be on Trump's side. And he's doing this and planning this out on purpose because, again, we have to win the midterms. Because we need the midterms to actually enact certain laws so the Federal Reserve never comes back, and we need to remove certain amendments that were put into place to assist the Federal Reserve. And I do believe that's where all this is headed, and this is how important it is. Because, again, if we do not get rid of the central bank, everything that we're seeing, everything that we're experiencing doesn't go away. Might go away for 5, maybe 10 years. I don't even think that long. But everything will happen once again. And actually, it'll be worse because the central bankers will bring us into their new system, and that is the central bank digital currency. And this is why Trump is working so hard to initiate the tariffs, keep them in place, get the Supreme Court ruling, because he knows how important this is if we're going to take back this country, and we're going to take it back economically. So, again, this is very, very important, and I do believe in the end, Trump is going to win. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.